Centuries ago, American Indians were building earthen monuments in North Louisiana. Hand by hand and basketful by basketful, men and women shaped nearly 2 million cubic yards of soil into stunning landscapes. The result was a massive 72-foot tall mound, enormous concentric half circles, and related earthworks that dwarfed every other earthen monument site for 2,200 years. Welcome, y'all, to Red Onion Podcast. This week, we'll be talking about Poverty Point, located in northeast Louisiana. Also, we'll be discussing some festivals. Our Louisiana artist spotlight is Buddy Bolden. He was an African-American cornist in the early 1900s. Also, today's sauce, we'll be talking about Poverty Point food. And also, you can visit us on our website. Our website is www.redonionent.com. Get us on Facebook. You can get us at Red Onion Entertainment. And also you can get us on Twitter at Red Onion ENTERT1. Okay, first thing up is Louisiana festivals. We have one festival. This festival right here goes out throughout the month of November. It's the Louisiana Renaissance Festival in Hammond, Louisiana. Please go check that place out. They got educational, they got holiday shopping going on, got a theme park, bunch of things to do right there in Hammond, Louisiana. Just about an hour east of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, about an hour north of New Orleans off of Interstate 55. All right, so we're going to go into our artist spotlight. Our artist spotlight today is Buddy Bolden. Buddy Bolden's real name was Charles Joseph Buddy Bolden, and he was born on September 6, 1877. He died November 4th, 1931. Buddy Bolden was an American cornist who was regarded a key figure in the development of New Orleans-style ragtime music, or jazz. That's Jass, which later became known as jazz, Jazz. So Bolden was known around New Orleans as King Bolden. King Bolden and his band, Jazz Royalty, was popular in New Orleans from around 1900 to 1907. He was known for his loud sound and improv skills. His style had an impact on younger musicians around New Orleans. Buddy Bolden's trombonist, Willie Cornish, among others, recalled making a phonographic cylinder recording with Bolden's band. But there have been no surviving copies that we know of. So at this point right now, we have not found any copies from him right now. Many early jazz musicians credited Bolden and his bandmates with having came from known as jazz. So he's the godfather of it. Thought the term was not common musical use until the era of Bolden's prominence. At least one writer was labeled Bolden as the father of jazz. He is credited with creating a looser, more improv version of ragtime and adding the blues into his music. Bolden's band was said to be the first to have brass instruments play the blues. I think before that was you had guitars that played the blues and stuff like that. So he also said to have adapted ideas from gospel music heard in uptown African American Baptist churches. That's uptown New Orleans. And instead of copying off of other cornists, Bolden played hard. He played by ear, and he adapted to his horn. In doing so, he created an exciting and novel fusion of ragtime, black scarred music, marching band music, and rural blues that was coming out of the Delta, rural areas of around New Orleans. He rearranged the typical New Orleans dance band of the time to better accommodate the blues. So as we can see, Buddy Bolden was really a blues player, but he started jazz, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. String instruments became the rhythm section, and the frontline instruments, the clarinets, the trombones, and of course Bolden's on the cornet, which is really a trumpet. That was like the front. That was in the front line and more of a lead instrument, and he kind of started that. Bolden was known as a powerful, loud, wide open playing style. People like King Oliver, Freddie Keppert, Buck Johnson, and other early New Orleans jazz musicians were directly inspired by his playing. There's, like I said, there's no recordings known of Buddy at this time that has survived. Some of the songs first associated with his band were traditional songs like "Careless Love" and "My Bucket's Got a Hole in It" are still standards today. A lot of jazz cats are still playing that. Bolden often closed his shows with the original number "Get Out of Here and Go Home." Although more polite gigs, the last number would be "Home Sweet Home." One of the most famous Bolden numbers, "Funky Butt," later known as Buddy Bolden's Blues, which represents one of the earliest references to the concept of funk in popular music. Buddy's "Funky Butt" was Danny Barker's once put it, reference to a effect on the auditorium full of sweaty people dancing close together and belly rubbing. "Funky Butt" was one of the many Bolden's in his repertoire, with rude or off-colored lyrics popular in some of those rougher places where he played. Bolden is also credited with the invention of the Big Four, a key rhythmic innovation on the marching band beat, which gave jazz much more room to individual improv, and that's where jazz is very important. As Wynton Marsalis explains, the Big Four was the first syncopated bass drum pattern that derived from the standard on the beat march. The second half of the Big Four is the pattern commonly known as the ham bone rhythm, developed in the subsaharan, I can't say that word, African music. It came out of African music traditions. So Buddy Bolden, when he got older, at the age of 30, he suffered he was an alcoholic, and acute alcoholic. And in 1907, at the age of 30, he with that full diagnosis of that, he had dementia out of that. He was admitted to the Louisiana State Insane Asylum in Jackson, Louisiana, a mental institution where he spent the rest of his life. While there is a substantial first-hand oral history about Bolden, facts about his life continue to be lost in his colorful myth. Stories about his being a barber by trade, or that he published a scandal sheet called "The Cricket" have been repeated in print despite being debunked decades earlier. Okay, now we're going to get to our spotlight. Poverty Point. Poverty Point is located in northeast Louisiana, in the lower Mississippi Valley, surrounded from the Gulf Coast, from about 1730 to 1350 BC. Archaeologists have identified more than 100 sites as belonging to this mound-building culture, which also formed a large trading network throughout much of the eastern part of what now is occupied by the United States. Okay, so it's located near the town of Elps in northeast Louisiana. Poverty Point is one of the most significant sites of this type in the world. It's Louisiana's only site to merit inclusion on the World Heritage List by the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. Dating back to about 1700 to 1100 BC, it represents the largest, most complex settlement of the late period in North America. The amount of fortitude and the organization needed to build the Poverty Point without the modern instruments, domesticated animals, and even wheeled carts must have been staggering. And for that reason, we still do not know, but clues are constantly being revealed. Archaeologists have much to work with as millions of artifacts were found on this site. Domestic tools, human figurines, and tons of stones from up to 800 miles away have led to the speculation of Poverty Point in northeast Louisiana was an ancient residential trade and center. Preceded to Poverty Point culture is the Western Break site is present in Ouachita Parish, Louisiana, where even earthwork mounds were built beginning about 3500 BC, long time ago. Blake is also the earliest mound complex in America. The next oldest is Poverty Point culture, which thrived from 1730 to 1350 BC during the late period in Arctic of period in North America. Evidence of the mound builder culture has been found at more than 100 sites, as we talked about, including Jackson site and the Benzoli in Mississippi. The largest and best known site is Poverty Point, located in the Malkin Ridge near the present day of Elps, Louisiana. The Poverty Point culture may have hit its peak in about 1500 BC. It is one of the oldest complex cultures and possibly the first tribal culture in the Mississippi Delta and the present-day United States. The people occupied villages that extended for nearly 100 miles on either side of the Mississippi River. Poverty Point was abandoned around 1100 BC. The more recent native group added another mound in about AD 700, but was only occupied a small fraction of that site, and only for a brief period. Aside from that, there was only humans used the site about 2,900 years ago until the European Americans settled in the area in the 1800s. After hearing of a few reports on the ancient settlement, archaeologists began recording the site, collecting stuff, and getting countless artifacts. In 1962, the federal government designated it a national historic landmark, one of the highest honors for a site like this in the United States. And in 2014, the site achieved perhaps the highest honor of all. It was named Poverty Point World Heritage Site by the UNESCO. There are only 3 other sites like this in the United States with this distinction. Poverty Point is not the name given to the site by the people who built it and lived there. Archaeologists do not know what this group called its home, nor do they know the name of the tribe responsible for the earthworks. Long after the settlement had been abandoned by the American Indians, a cotton plantation named Poverty Point was established in the early 19th century on the property. So that's how it got its name. So Poverty Point, you need to go check that out. You need to put it on your bucket list to go see it. It's got a world. They got a world of information there. There are a lot of artifacts there. I have not made it there yet, but I will make it one day, and that's on my bucket list to go and see this beautiful area that has been fixed up. And it's definitely, people need to know about it, and it's a lot to do with stuff that happened 300,000 years ago, or 29,000 years ago, excuse me. So Poverty Point in Northeast Louisiana, north of Monroe. Need to visit. All right, now we're gonna move over on to the sauce, and we're talking about Poverty Point. Poverty Point, what we know of, or what they ate and all that. We're going to talk about that briefly. The fish was a big staple. Being close to the Mississippi River, fish would be in all the tributaries that come off of the Mississippi, and fish was a big thing. So next to the fish, venison was real big. Was also important meat to them. Small mammals such as cottontails and venison, and the swamp rabbits, and the fox squirrels and the raccoons, and stuff like that was very important to these people at the time. Plants undoubtedly provided the main part of the Poverty Point food because it remains are rarely preserved, and we have a limited view of the contributions. Also, what they basically would eat on is like nuts, primites, including like hickory nuts and pecans and acorns and walnuts. And that was basically it, and that's what they lived on. So they had a very small diet, and they did what they had to do. So don't forget to visit our website at www.redonionent.com, and you can get us on Facebook at Red Onion Entertainment, and also get us on Twitter at Red Onion ENTTERT1. That's going to conclude today's podcast, and thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, please hit me up on Facebook or on the website. You can get to me with my email, or you can get me on Twitter. Let me know if you have any questions, or you have anything that you would want to maybe I can talk about on the podcast. Please let me know. Y'all have a good day, and we'll see y'all next time.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.